Hello viewers, it is time for the fourth and final round of the Manufacturers Cup. This one's going to be a really tricky race. 15 laps around Dragon Trail Gardens with, it says, 5 times tyre wear, but this is going to be a no-stop race, so the tyres are going to die. We're going to jump in for the first one. Interestingly, there is a threat of rain in the air for this, but it is meant to be dry, so qualifying, let's try and have a good one. Okay, so the first qualifying session here around the very tricky Dragon Trail Gardens. This quadruple apex right-hander posing many issues for me and for Andy in front there. So this was my first lap, my first flying lap of the entire session. Crossing the line, the 31.5, which initially put me on pole position for about 5 seconds. The glory was short-lived, but it was a very close lobby, as you can see. Second lap, things were about to go south quite quickly because this is a very difficult circuit, especially through the chicane with all the sausages on it. We have seen this one before. I mean, the death chicane is over on the seaside version of Dragon Trail, but the garden circuit has its own death chicane as well. So through the quadruple right, I was on quite a good lap here, trying to improve upon the 31.5 on lap number 1. Pole position at this point, 31.0 from the Croatian on home turf. We're coming out the final corner, just got a little bit loose on the rear end, and into barrier we go, and that was that. Ultimately, end of all of that, I was down in 8th position. 8th on the grid, not too good. Could have been a little bit higher, but to be honest, maybe 5th at best. We're going to have a good race. Let's jump in. So the guy on pole position wanted me to make him famous, so he's on pole, he's in this video. Does that make him famous? I don't know, you tell me. Anyway, the race begins. As you can see on the weather radar, looks like there was some spots of rain in the air somewhere. Don't know if it was over the track, but it was dry to begin with, so we didn't really have to worry too much about that for the time being. So it was kind of a weird one. The weather was a bit of a factor, but also at the same time it wasn't. So starting here in 8th position, could definitely be a bit higher than this. It's a 15 lap race. Let me give some context here as we go through the chicane of sausages and have almost flip the car over, it seems. It's a 15 lap race with high tyre wear as I get a penalty, and ideally you need to try to get the end without stopping. As we got up the inside, big dive bomb here into the hairpin, and so towards the end of the race, tyre wear was going to be a factor. You're going to be on dead tyres. It was going to get very difficult from here to the end. So towards the end of the first lap, serving the penalty, luckily only surrendering 1 position. Of course, losing lots of positions early on is not useful. I mean, it's never useful. But getting a penalty on the first lap can often result in lots of positions lost. So here we are, back in 8th, back where we started. Lap 2, let's whip it round to turn 2. The death chicane, the horrible corner. You really do have to ride the sausages, as awful as that is to say, but it is the quickest line. As we come through the car in front there, the Lexus, getting a little bit loose, and I, too, got the rear end round a little bit. End of lap number 2, you can see quite a big group forming up in front, us from 3rd down to 7th, and I'm a little bit off here. Beginning just to pull away from 9th, but it's one of those races where it's so easy to make a mistake around the Dragon Trail Garden circuit. There's so many places where you can just get loose, a bit of contact up in front. It's often the curbs that do it around here. Getting loose on the edge of a curb or on the sausages that we're about to go through here. And the group in front is getting very close. And McLaren falls victim to the second sausage there and gets a very poor exit off the chicane. And thus we're going to move up into 7th. Group in front, extremely close. Look at this up in front. As on the brakes, as we brake just before the 100 meter boards, we're going to pull right up to the back of them and join the battle. So 5 players here, or pretty much about 7 of us in the fight for 3rd. Nissan GTRs, Lexus, a couple of BMWs in there as well. These tend to be the stronger cars that people are picking for this manufacturer's season at the moment. Lexus goes flying in. I tried to perform the old switcheroo. Doesn't quite come off, and now I'm on the outside going into the quadruple right-hander. This is surely going to be a disastrous moment for me. So I could have maybe gained 2 positions, but I'm going to end up losing 2. So I'm now 9th, could have been about 5th if that had all gone to plan. It just shows you how you have to be very clinical in these fine moments. Into the final corner of lap number 3. Car trying to go around the outside, not quite going to work. We're going to force him wide and keep 9th position for the time being. Close battling between everyone in this fight here, but this is not helping really in the sense of trying to preserve your tyres, as we are really going a bit too hard here, too early, and going around the outside in this and GTR back into 8th. So I'm back to where I started. Still in 8th, up the inside of the Lexus, looking for the move. He's going to ride it around the outside, and that's a good defence. Not quite able to pull off the move completely. And finally, after all of that, the race is about to settle down, at least for a moment or so here. Coming down the back straight towards the hairpin, big braking zone here, and boom, up the inside, nice, lovely move on the brakes, park it on the apex, prevent the old switcheroo. Run him wide on the exit. There's no chance of him coming back here as we have the left-hander in our favour. And that is 7th position. A bit of clear air up in front. And so now the main focus is on pulling towards these cars in front and not getting drawn into a battle with the cars behind. You really want to be making forward progress in these races. As you could probably tell by now, that is the objective. Try to finish at the front, not at the back. Coming through the quadruple right onto the back straight. We've got a nice solid margin now. This is lap number 6. Catching up with P6, who is in the McLaren. And I'm going to have a massive moment on the curb. That curb just was not kind to me at all. Continue turning left into a right-hander, which is suboptimal. And now, with dirty tyres, I'm going to have to try and hold off the Swiss driver and the British driver just behind through the quadruple right. I mean, not an ideal corner to have to go around with filthy tyres, but thankfully I just about managed to rebuff their attacks and maintain 7th position here, heading towards the final corner. I'm not going to go defensive. I'm just going to hope that he doesn't send out the inside, and thankfully he doesn't. So I'm going to maintain the position for now. There's a big queue of cars immediately behind, so a big threat that should I make another mistake, I'm going to lose another big handful of positions. So this is a rather unfortunate moment for the R4M driver up in front in the McLaren, because coming out of this left-hander, he's going to inadvertently, on the edge of the curb, end up facing the wall. And you can probably gather that this position here, facing near enough 90 degrees to the right on a straight, is not what you want to do. And he's going to go flying into the wall, and I'm up into P6. With the right-hand tyres really suffering around this circuit, lots of left-handers. Those right-hand tyres really do take the beating around here, especially through the likes of turn number 1, a very long left-hander, fast corner as well. This is lap number 10, now lap number 12. As you can see, fairly good progress of catching up with this Nissan GTR to finish in the top 5. As we just get a bit loose on the edge of that curb, it's really easy to do that, to fall into the fate of the McLaren a couple of laps ago. And this is lap number 13. As you can see, I think I saved my tyres pretty well up to this point. Looking up the inside, down the hill, lovely move. He's going to perform a nice little switcheroo. You might have seen that on the map there. So we're now side by side for the second half of this corner, and it's really good battling. You might have noticed how close the pack has become. Second place is well within sight. The leader is long gone. The Croatian who wanted some fame, well, he's done a very good job here of securing victory. Second place is not out of the question, as we're going to run that guy wide, move up into 5th. I think my pace late in the race has been pretty solid after trying to preserve my tyres early doors. That is now paying dividends here at the end of the race. 2 laps to go, defending the position quite hard there, up against the pit wall, against the GTR, and now chasing down 4th. Second place might be out of the question with only 2 laps remaining, but we're going to do our best here into the chicane, really trying to preserve the speed for this second bit. Over the curb, not ideal, and then just getting that line dead right. There's only one way you can do it to get the maximum speed through there. End of lap number 14, onto the back of the Hungarian driver in the GTR. There's a couple of BMWs up in front, second and third for BMW. The leader is in a McLaren, which seemed to be a very strong car for this race because of its ability to preserve its tyres. 1 lap to go. We're going to force him fully to the left-hand side, move out to the right last moment to try to really scupper his line, and he actually parks it on the apex quite well, and I can't quite undercut him on the way through the exit. And on the brakes into turn 2, just braking way too late up the inside, overcooked it completely, especially with near enough dead tyres, and I've surrendered the position back down to 6th place. A really good battle. Unfortunately, I'm going to be on the wrong end of that result, finishing after 15 laps in 6th place. Just had to be 6th, didn't it? Just had to be 6th. I think pace was good enough for 2nd. The guy in the lead was way too quick. 236 points. We can definitely do better than that. Okay, on to race number 2. Now, I'm going to cover this one quite quickly because it quickly turned out to be a complete disaster. And this is just what happens sometimes. I mean, if you're good, maybe it doesn't. But for me, it did. This is my 2nd qualifying lap. I did a 31.2 first lap, which was okay. 2nd lap, binned it. Fortunately enough for me, I remained in 4th on the grid. It could have been a pole. It's just one of those days where the opportunities were looking like they could have been there, but I just wasn't taking them. And here's an example of not taking an opportunity. An opportunity to stay on the track as I just drive left into the wall. The rear end of the car just really got loose very easily on the edge of that curb. And that was me losing positions very quickly as everyone goes past, and I'm very quickly down into 15th position, having started 4th. So as you can probably tell, that is not a good way to start a race. This was a lap later, end of lap number 2. I mean, I was down to 16th out of 16. I was last. And then, just to rub salt into the wounds, through this curb again, having a big issue, just hitting it at the wrong angle, and it just bounces the car into the wall. What the fuck is that? And yeah, I can't promise that there wasn't some swearing there. So I pitted, boxed the car, but then I thought, you know what, let's put some fresh tyres on and go out and just set the fastest lap. Let's make a statement and put my name up on the screen. So after a couple of laps of practicing, there we go, boom, fastest lap. That's what really matters. It wasn't a win, but I'll take a fastest lap. As the crowd goes absolutely ballistic as they just see the fastest lap of all time. But that was that. Boxed the car, did all I needed to do, and it was going to be a boom 16th. Got the fastest lap though. That's what really matters. We're going to have to go again in race number 3. Okay, race number 3. It'd be good if I could do this one without messing up. That'd be nice, wouldn't it? That would be nice. But as you can probably gather what's about to happen here, I mean, the first lap was okay. A 31.2 seemed to be my pace, but through here, kind of a half mistake, should we say. Well, it's a mistake. A mistake is a mistake. And losing a good 4/10 near enough through sector 1, which is an absolute disaster when you're trying to improve. Through the second split, I did go a 10th faster than the first lap. And I took a pretty decent line here through this quadruple right, which did help. But it wasn't going to be enough because at the end, I did go slightly quicker, in fact, but improving to 2nd. However, as the session progressed and people finished their laps, it was only good enough for 5th. 5th. That is so frustrating again. I could have gone 4/10 quicker. Could have easily been on pole. But this is a day of mistakes. This is the last race now, so we've got to have a mistake-free race. Let's see if we can do it. So yes, here we go. A Mercedes on the front row. Where have I seen that before? We're going to jump in with the Auto ID Super GT BMW M6, our final attempt at this race. Only 3 attempts in the Manufacturers' Cup. So we've got to get it right. The pressure's on now to deliver the goods after 2 failed attempts. I mean, the first race wasn't too bad. The second one was bad. This one, I mean, it could have started better with a better qualifying position, but we're going to have to work for it here from 5th position on the grid. Going through the chicane, and do I almost lose control? No, actually I don't on this occasion. It was just fine. Guy in 2nd did get a penalty. The danger here is that we start fighting a bit too much and the leader just pulls away because of excessive combat, should we say, between us. So the leader looks pretty comfortable there in that Mercedes, up behind the Supra here. And I felt like my main issue around this race was just visibility. When I was super close to someone like this, like I am with this Supra, coming through this chicane, just coming up, was so difficult to spot exactly the line you needed to take. You have to be ultra precise through this triple chicane here, the left, the right, and then the left again. You have to drive right over the middle of that sausage, and boom, I couldn't quite see it because I was so close to the car in front. Thankfully, with some quick reactions, I managed to gather it up and not lose too much time. There's a real danger of following a car quite closely through a lot of these corners. You couldn't quite spot the exact line that you needed to take. So I needed to either maybe give a bit of a buffer to the car in front, or get the job done and overtake and be in the lead, and no one's in front of you. So through here, the Supra taking a bit of a slow line on the exit, going defensive. This is my main fear, really, of too much fighting, too much defending, and losing time to the leader. Gap to the leader now about 2.5. It was about 2 seconds early doors, and then we've probably just lost 3/10 through that one corner alone from that defending. I'm going to give him a bump draft here. Perhaps tell him, you know, I'm willing to get a move on with you. Let's not fight too much. Let's try to catch back up to the guys in front. It's only lap 5. We have plenty of time here to try to do a better position than just 4th and 5th. We can definitely get 2nd and 3rd here, as they are just about a second in front, not too far away at all. Through the chicane, and oh my goodness, it was worse that time. This time I'm very much on the back foot up against the Genesis here in 6th place. 6th place is coming hunting for me, and coming into the hairpin braking zone, I'm going to go defensive. I'm going to play it safe here, make sure this guy does not lunge me, park it on the apex, just make sure this car stays behind me no matter what. We protected the position. Now for this middle sector, is really a fast sweeping sector. You can really just turn your attention forward, you don't really have to defend. So just got to re-establish this gap to the car behind and get back onto the back of this Supra up in front. So it's really hard to overtake around this track, actually. I found it quite tricky in certain scenarios. The Supra has really good straight line speed, and so trying to get the better of it into a corner is always difficult because it's so good on the straights. But this is lap number 7, as you can see. It took a couple of laps to reassess my situation and to pull onto the back of the Supra once again. Near enough halfway into the race, as we cross the line at the end of lap number 7, pulling into turn number 1. Fast sweeping left-hander. The right-hand tyres screaming in pain, as the leader now only 3 seconds in front. So it's still quite a tight race, actually, and I felt like by this point of the race, near enough halfway in, the Supra would begin wearing out his tyres quite a lot. You might have noticed I took a different line through the chicane, just opting to not go over the sausage on the 3rd part, which seemed to be a lot safer and actually has worked out, because now I'm going to be able to go up the inside into the hairpin. So just adjusting my approach through that chicane to be a bit more safe, might be a tiny bit slower. Over the course of a 15 lap race, perhaps consistent does equal faster as you get it right more often than not. You can see 2nd and 3rd, they were really battling very hard throughout this race. It's a BMW and a Nissan GTR, and I honestly felt like they could have caught up with the leader had they just settled their differences and decided to work together. They must have overtaken each other a good 3 or 4 times in this opening half of the race, and now it was my turn to try to get in on the action as we go really late on the brakes and actually catch up a lot. Now weirdly, this GTR must have not got the memo about doing a no-stop race, because he's gone into the pit lane and he's going to change his tyres presumably, or his mum's just called him down for dinner, I don't know. But that moves me up into 3rd. I'll take a free position. Now up behind a fellow BMW driver. The Mercedes just tantalisingly in sight in the lead there, 2.2 seconds in front. I felt like I did have the pace on the Mercedes, I just couldn't quite utilise it through battling other cars, etc. Into the final corner, lap number 9, 6 laps remaining after this one. We are entering the final phases here. The tyres are beginning to wear out, especially on the right side. The car becomes harder to drive. It doesn't quite want to cooperate with your inputs. And again, this chicane here is just such a nightmare to take, to get it dead right every time. and I've got the additional problem now of being right behind the car. Taking the different line, just going a bit wider, playing it safe. You can see the BMW in front just pulls away by maybe half a car length by taking the riskier line, and so I'm not quite close enough here to go for this move. I did make it work earlier in the race, the big dive bomb into the hairpin, but not on this occasion, not quite close enough there. I really sensed that any move I pull off now really needed to be a perfect move. I couldn't afford to lose a second or half a second by getting a poor overtake, because that would just mean the Mercedes in the lead would just pull away, and that would be that. So down the dip into the quadruple right, just plotting my way through here. Am I going to be able to get close enough here? No. The BMW actually in front, they got a really good exit, just opening up a car length or so, and that's going to be way too far for me to dive bomb into this final corner. Gap to the leader below 2 seconds for the first time pretty much since lap number 1 or 2. It does climb back to about 2 seconds there. So we're definitely quicker than this guy in first place. I just can't quite get past second, which needs to happen, of course. So through here, taking the wider line once more. Now this is where I make a bit of a indecisive move. So I was in two minds about sticking behind from this range or also going for the dive bomb, and I kind of just don't really do either. Or I kind of try to do both, and I go into the back of him, and as a result the gap goes from 1.9 to about 2.4 to the leader. So we've just lost half a second just from that indecisiveness from myself, and that could put the Mercedes out of range now in terms of going for that race win. But I need to really just reassess this and just try to go for this second place at the minimum. I think I've definitely got the measure of this guy. I just wonder if he's fighting with the Nissan GT-R early doors, has begun to really wear out his tyres in this latter phase of the race. The Supra just behind, lurking ominously. Should I make any error now, I'm going to immediately lose a position. So right on the tail here, pretty much touching the rear bumper, with Sonic there on the rear end of the car. We're going to actually push Sonic here. Watch this. Smashing into the back of him. But then instead of the second push, we're going to go for the betrayal by turning left and going up the inside. And he's not going to quite turn in. He's seen my positioning there, and he's going to surrender the position. Up into second we go with a 3-second margin to the lead. Is it possible to go for the race win here with only 3 laps remaining? I've definitely got the pace on this guy. And through here, I go back to taking the risky line because I know that I have to really just go for it now. And in fact, as a result of that, the gap has immediately come down to 2.4. I've gained 0.6 of a second in one section alone, or one corner alone. And this is definitely on should the leader make similar mistakes in the next 2 laps. This is lap number 14, 2 laps left to go. Tyres on everyone's cars beginning to really feel it by this point. The gap now down to 1.9, so you can see it's getting tantalisingly small, but is it going to be enough with 1.5 laps left to go? I've pulled away easily from the Italian in the BMW, gap now 1.7 behind, and so I felt like I really had good pace late in the race, just by saving the tyres early doors. 1.4 the gap going into the final lap. And I just felt like if he makes a big mistake here through this chicane, which is very easy to do, then we definitely have half a chance into the second half of the race, or second half of the lap, should I say. And through here, he just doesn't quite make that mistake. I must say, this Frenchman in the lead just drove a very well considered and consistent race, not really making many mistakes at all. Not that I could see, really. The gap did come down to 1 second, or just above 1.2. By the end, with my right front dying, that was it. It was going to be a second place. Unfortunately, couldn't bring out the win, but I'll take it. Wow, that was tough. I'll take a second though. I think with better qualifying, could have won it. I think this really shows you have to be clinical, take your chances, be consistent, don't make mistakes. I think that's the lesson of today's video. 281 points in the end. That was the highest one of the 3. Ideally, I'd get above 300, but that's the best I could do today. Oh, here we go. The results are in, and 5.1 million credits. 19th for BMW, 99th in the continent, or EMEA, should I say.